One of the biggest mistakes that you can make before you begin installing tile is not getting the walls flat and or plumb. If you see here, we got a sheet membrane up on the wall, but our wall has not only a big belly in it, but it is out of plumb. And what happens if you were to just start setting tile on this, you would deal with lippage, uneven tiles, uneven cuts, and you would just fight the installation way more than if you prepared it properly. My name's Isaac Ostrom, and I'm going to show you how to get the walls ready to install tile. So this back wall here, we did as part of our 2-day course. We did an in-person training through tilecoach.com. If you're interested in that, go to tilecoach.com. Under the tile coaching tab, you'll see the classes that we have coming up. Most of the time, what you want to do is you want to prepare the walls before you put the wallboard on. You could use a few different methods of shimming. You can use cardboard shims, you could cut furring strips, you can plane down studs. There's a number of options that you have at your disposal, and I do go over that in a few different videos, and I'll include links to those videos in the description below. But as you can see here, we got a perfectly flat wall. This one we did with cardboard shims and the laser technique, and this one is ready to go. But sometimes you show up on a job site, maybe somebody already has the wallboard up, and you just have to deal with what's there. Sometimes if there's cement board already installed and you notice and you go, oh no, my walls didn't get to where I want them. Instead of pulling all of the wallboard off, you can use what we call flashing or a rendering technique to get the walls flat and plumb and ready for tile without having to take the wallboard back off. These are called flashing strips. You can get these on tilecoach.com. These are less than a 32nd inch thick of a plastic material, and they come in 8-foot lengths. So you're just gonna cut those down to the size of your wall. Our wall is just under 8 feet, so we had to trim a little bit off. A laser is helpful. While maybe not necessary, definitely speeds things up and makes it easier. So I suggest using a laser. I got a couple different trowels. I got a 6-inch taping knife. I got a margin trowel. I have 2 flat trowels, and I have a 1/2 by 1/2 notch trowel. Your regular tile setting notches will be helpful when you do this. I have a rubber mallet, and I have a couple straight edges. Now these L straight edges, they come in a set. They come in a 6-piece set. They're great to have if you're installing tile. I do suggest picking up a set. I do have them for sale on tilecoach.com, but you can get them through Amazon or somewhere else if you want to as well. If you don't want to use a straight edge or buy the straight edge set, you can just use a straight piece of wood. This is just a piece of MDF baseboard. I cut to the length I wanted, and we're going to use this as a screeding tool on the wall. 6-foot level is handy. You can use a 4-footer, but I do suggest if you're setting any tile, get yourself a 6-foot level. That's what we're going to use to plumb our flashing strips. Thinset mortar. What I have here is Pro Light, and I have it mixed to a pretty stiff consistency. This is pretty thick. You can see it standing up. You don't want it too stiff that you fight it, but definitely you want this thinset mixed up stiff. So this is Pro Light. I recommend using any kind of lightweight thinset, but Pro Light available at Home Depot. I'm not sponsored by them, but it's a great thinset, easy to use and very workable. One other option would be to use a speed set to set your strips, but I don't recommend it. You know, you don't want it to fire off too fast. You'll be fighting it. I recommend just using a regular thinset that's not going to set up too fast. Let's get going. As you can see here, we have our shower modules that we built. Everything's already been waterproofed. Again, we did this in our 2-day course. We built this from scratch. We used bricks on the curb. We did a mortar bed. We used the mortar lock ledgers on the sides, flow effects drain. We did this whole entire thing in a 2-day course. I had this flood testing for over 30 days, which is awesome. So we have it all prepped for tile other than getting these walls to where we want them. And I kind of wanted to save this part to make a complete separate other video to render walls. I'm going to use my laser to give us a plumb line for when we set these strips. I want them to be set vertically plumb and not wavy, because that can throw things off. So I just use a laser. You could also just draw a line on your wall and put your strip up along that. So I'm just going to set my laser, and again, this is about 3 or 4 inches off the wall. It doesn't really matter that much. I mean, somewhere right in there is going to be good. So I'm going to start by putting my thinset on the wall, and I want to gauge how much thinset I'm going to be putting. So, you know, plumb is about right there, and it looks like we're about 3/8 off of plumb from this side, and you can see as I go down it gets smaller and smaller. So this is going to give you an idea of how much thinset to apply on the wall and where. I'm going to need less. I want it to be bottomed out at the bottom, and I want it to be about 3/8 out at the top. And you don't have to be perfectly plumb here. If anything, I'm probably going to err on the side of the wall, pushing my level in a little bit so that I'm just slightly out of plumb, but a lot better than what it was. That way, if you err on the side of going closer to the wall, you can avoid it actually, you know, going the other way and exacerbating the problem. That's the last thing you want to do, is put more material on than you need to. So I will just err slightly on having the wall lean a little bit this way. Getting the wall flat is the most important. Plumb is a secondary thing that definitely helps, especially on the inside, because if this wall is plumb, when you're doing the cuts on this wall of tile, you can make all of these cuts the same size. If this wall is leaning in this way like it is, each of those tile cuts would need to grow, and you need to measure each one. So it's much faster if you have a plumb inside corner, that you're able to make the same exact cut down there as there, and you can run all the cuts at once. Makes it so much easier. So we're going to shoot for that. We're going to build out, it looks like we're going to be building out about 3/8 of an inch. On this side, we are looking much better, and we are almost plumb on this wall. Maybe it's just going to be slightly, you know, we're only about a 1/16. Let's go ahead. I know how much mud I need to get on here. Let's get started. I'm trying to get better at not using the term mud interchangeably with thinset, fat mud, deck mud. I mean, I call everything mud, and really I should be calling it thinset or fat mud or deck mud or dry pack. So if I catch myself saying mud in this video, I'm referring to thinset. First thing I'm going to do is just get the mud up on the wall with my flat trowel. You could use a couple different trowel techniques to get this up on the wall, but first thing I'm going to do is just kind of, I want to do a burn coat. What a burn coat is a bonding coat. Especially when your thinset is stiff, you want to make sure that that thinset gets locked in to the fibers of this membrane, or locked into the cement or whatever substrate you're putting it on. You want it to be mechanically bonded. So by doing this burn coat, that's going to help with that. And this Pro-Lite is really nice thinset. It's really creamy and smooth, and even when you mix it up really thick, it tends to go on really well. Now that I have that, I'm just going to start applying the thinset in the approximate thickness that I'm going to be using. And I'm building it out right on that laser line. Again, lasers make things so much easier these days, because if you're to draw a line with a pen or a pencil, you'd have to leave it so you can see it. With the laser, I can do stuff right over it. And And this is gonna have to be pretty thick up here. And you want to make sure that you're putting enough mortar on there that you're not going to have to add more afterwards, because it's a pain in the butt to add more thinset. I definitely want to get it as much as I need up there in the first try. See, I'm kind of just using a technique of getting the thinset like that, and then just kind of pushing it into itself on the wall. And that burn coat again is really helping out, because I'm able to lock it in there. I do a similar technique. I kind of adapted this from the old school wall floating technique that we do here in California, where we use fat mud, which is basically like stucco, and we use redwood furring strips and lath, and those redwood furring strips are like a 1/4 inch thick, and you place them into the mortar, and then you screed off, and that mud is usually about a 1/2 inch thick. This, we're able to go with thinset, we're able to go to 0. I mean, I'm bottoming out. These flashing strips are they're less than a 32nd of an inch. They're 30 mils, thickness of a credit card. I can actually slam those in down to 0, so it's not like we're building out more than we need to. So I'm just gonna check. You can see like right here, I got kind of a belly, so I just wanna make sure I got a good, consistent bed all the way up. And you can add more. Again, this ProLite does amazing at getting built out. We did a test with ceiling tiles, and we just thin-setted ceiling tiles, 12 by 24 porcelain up on the wall. And I used 3 different thin sets. I used ProLite, I used Multimax Light from Laticrete, and I used Ardex X77, and ProLite beat them all. I hung 40 pounds from it while it was still wet. I had a suction cup and a bucket full of water that weighed 40 pounds. Jeez, look at that. As I'm talking about how good it is. Oh, that came off nicely. That was easy. And 40 pounds, and the tile did not come off. If you want to see that video, I'll put the link in the description. But you can just take my word for it. Thinset, this is a great thinset. It does take a little bit longer to dry than a lot of the other modified thinsets on the market, which to me is good in most cases. The only time I want a thinset to really set up is usually if I'm working on a floor with really large tiles, like 24 by 48s. So when using ProLite, we just wait a full 24 hours before we walk on it, because it does take a little bit longer to set up. But again, that can help you out, especially if you're a beginner. You want longer pot life, longer open time. You want that thinset to take longer to set up. It's much more forgiving. I'm going to take my flashing strip and my level and my rubber mallet, and I'm just going to place my strip with the laser line right in the middle. Hopefully that's where we put the bulk of our thinset. And again, I don't know how much we're built out here, but what would you say, Lance? That's probably over an inch, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's at least an inch. So again, I wanted more. I might have went overkill on that. With putting that much, I'm probably gonna have to scrape some off as I put the level on it, but it's much easier to take off than to add. But you don't want so much that it's falling down on you and creating a mess. But kind of touching the flashing strip into the thinset. I can tell that I don't have quite enough in this area. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my margin trowel and maybe a little bit of thinset. And I'm just gonna add a little bit under the strip right there. And a lot of times you can just push in from the side to add thinset under it. Sometimes you might need to add a little more, but that's kind of just putting a little more thinset under that strip where I feel like maybe, and again, I could be wrong, it might be plenty, but it felt to me like I'd kind of missed a little bit. So yeah, you can kind of just scrape off a little bit from above and then fill in on the sides. Kind of hard to see the technique from there, but I'll do it on this side. See, I'm just kind of pushing in, and this isn't built out quite as far. So I'm just gonna pull the strip out a little bit and kind of fill in like that, and then I can push it down and it'll squish in there. So I want to take as many of the voids out as I can. There might be another spot right here. See, just by doing that, that filled in thinset from behind it. And I think I got plenty on there. Again, I think I'm maybe 1.5 inches up there. It's a lot. Okay, so now I can take my level, and the less thinset that you can get on your level, the better. And I know that I want to be bottomed out. I know that I need to be built out on the top. So I'm just kind of tapping in with my foot, and I'm going to see where I'm at. So you can see here by the bubble, I can push this strip in. If I'm all the way bottomed out, I'm going to keep going because I want this strip on the bottom to just be slammed. I want it to be tight against the wall. The other thing you want to keep in mind too, as I'm doing this, I want my level to stay square this way with the wall. I don't want to be beating my strip in with my level at an angle right like this, because that's going to push the strip in at an angle. You can just kind of watch it. You know, you can kind of see that the flat edge of the level is flat with the wall, and if it starts twisting, you want to correct that. So once I get it kind of started, I'm going to kind of just slide up and with firm pressure to get this flat, so that I at least have a starting point of where I want to be. And so I still have too much thinset under my strip. You can see I need to push this level in, which is where we want to be. We don't want the opposite where I'm like, oh no, I got to fill in behind the strip now. So now I'm just going to kind of go up the level. Again, I'm trying to keep my level perpendicular to the wall. We can go even a little more. Again, I want to err on the side of less thinset on the wall. And then you can see how the strip is billowing out right here. I'm just going to slide it up again. And since I have so much thinset, I'm going to take some off before it plops. I don't want that thinset to just kind of start plopping down on me. You see, I've managed to stay pretty clean here. And I'm just going to take this and just kind of take some of the excess thinset. I hold my margin trowel at an angle. It gives the strip a little more support if you go at an angle. Try not to get the thinset onto the strip itself. Again, we're trying to keep our level as clean as possible. And any thinset you get on the strip will just make that harder. And by doing this, you'll also be able to feel to make sure that you have support under that strip. And I can tell right in here I need a little bit more. But most of all, I need to get this off before it it falls down. This technique is also great. They do it a lot in Europe where they have cement block walls and they're rendering walls over old masonry, brick, plaster, where you can't just screw wallboard up. They have to deal with what's there. And so they do a lot of these rendering techniques in Europe. This is a much more common method in Europe. Here in the US, we have wood framing that we can, put shims on studs and stuff like that. But if you do find yourself old home that has plaster and you don't want to break it off, but the plaster's all wavy, just use this technique. It'll work great. Okay, so that's how much extra thinset I just took off of the wall. That didn't need to be there. So I should be a little bit closer here. I mean, it's getting really close, Lance. Again, I don't want to go too far.
That is really close.
What do you think? That's it, huh? I think we got it. So, one strip up. Let me go ahead and get this other strip. Again, as far as placement of these strips, you do need to be strategic about it. So, I can move my laser now. And I think I want it as close to the curb as possible. It might be nice to get the strip out here, but a lot of times you're ending your tile at the edge of the curb anyways. This is going to be fine, see, because when I screed this off, it's going to be able to ride right on that strip. And this one is it's going to take pretty minimal. And so I'm going to switch over to a notch trowel. That's what I have the notch trowels for, instead of having to put so much, because I knew I had to build up more than a notch trowel would allow. That's why I did it that way. So I'm just going to do a 1/2 inch notch. And when the thinset sits for a minute, you can just give it a nice stir. When it's this thick, when it's mixed up this stiff, you want it to remain workable, and you can do that by just giving it a quick stir with the margin trowel. And as a matter of fact, this is one of the first things that I teach my helpers to do when they're trying to learn tile. Is one of their primary jobs is to keep the thinset bucket stirred down, keep the thinset stirred up so it's workable. It does two things. Obviously, it helps me by keeping the thinset more workable and off of the sides and cleaner, but it also teaches them how the thinset behaves on a trowel and the techniques to stirring and picking it up. The more you have a trowel in the thinset itself, the more practice you're going to have, the better you're going to get at developing those skills of getting the thinset on trowels onto the wall. So a lot of this stuff is just practice that you could do at home. I tell a lot of beginners, just mix up a cheap batch of thinset and see how the trowels, how the notch trowels, how the flat trowels, how the margin trowels work with it. Get it onto a floor, screw a piece of drywall up on the wall, temporary, and just try to get that thinset up on the wall. And you could just spend hours practicing instead of having it your first time going in on a wall and the thinset's plopping down and it's just awkward. It's a learned movement, it really is. We all start somewhere. We all start from the beginning, and it looks awkward and it feels awkward, and before you know it, it becomes more and more comfortable, and you don't end up with thinset all over your clothes. So yeah, just by stirring that up, you see how much creamier thinset is just by a quick little stir like that. So we're going to start with the burn coat again. This little section down here. Okay, so yeah, just got the burn coat, and then I think what I'll do, I'll put a layer on here. I'm just gonna put a layer that a 1/2 inch notch is going to to work on it. I could do this with the 1/2-inch notch trowel, I'll show you. But getting thinset up on the wall with 2 flat trowels is a really efficient way of doing it. Again, it's kind of taken from the Hawken trowel of mortar floating that I've used and that we've used here in California. California has a really special connection and history with the tile trade. The NTCA actually formed from the Southern California Tile Contractors Association. Tile has always been big in our state. The unions that had a ton of influence on the training that went on in here in the 40s and 50s. And the result has been a really vibrant tile culture and a lot of specialized kind of methods. It's really unique. So I feel really blessed to have been a part of it. Okay, so I think I got enough on there for my 1/2-inch. So this is a little bit easier because I only need such a thin bed behind this strip, I don't have to build out so much. I can gauge it with my notch trowel. I'm gonna do my notches this way, because if I did them vertical, see, my strip might end on a void. I don't want that. I want my strip supported. And the reason why I have the 1/4 inch is I can probably do a 1/4 inch down at the bottom where I really want it slammed against the corner build out. But you see, by using my flat trowel to get the thinset up, I have enough thinset on the wall. I'm not scooping with my flat trowel or with my notch trowel. So that's pretty easy to do that. And again, maybe I'll take my 1/4 inch down at the bottom, because this is where I really don't need much thinset at all, is down here where there's already build out on that sheet membrane. So I don't know if you really need to do that, because it would probably smash out, but you know, play around with different notch trowels. Important thing is we're just getting the coverage that we need under there. So again, I always start from the top and got my handy laser line, just embedding that right in. Get it started by pushing it in, but I don't want to be pushing too much. Because believe it or not, a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch notch is only going to lay about an 1/8 to 3/16 of a bed when it's fully collapsed. So what I'll probably do is I'm going to get my strip just set, not like pushed in, because you don't want to go too far. But I want just so it stays, it's not sagging, it's staying put. Now I'm going to grab my margin trowel again. See, my helper would have had this margin trowel already nice and clean for me. He would have had this mud already stirred down. My trowels would have been all clean. Hey, if you want to be a tile helper, reach out to me, tilecoach.com. I might be able to pair you up with somebody. Again, not every area is going to have like an apprenticeship program. Only the major metropolitan areas in our country are going to have union apprenticeship stuff. The rest of it's like YouTube University, or learning from the person in front of you. But to get hands-on training, it's kind of hard. But a lot of times I compare people up, because I know installers, I know people that want to get in the trade. Hey, maybe it's a match, maybe you're in the same general location as somebody else and you want to learn to do tile the right way, then reach out to me, tilecoach.com. So I'm going to do that same technique of just kind of buttering in the sides. What I'm doing is filling in those notch trowel voids a little bit. You See this, the strips, you can kind of manipulate them a little bit, like just peel them up a little bit. Mud is wet dirt. I should just stop saying mud completely. Concrete guys also say mud, so makes it even more confusing. I'm just gonna go straight down with it just to keep my level clean. But if you need to build out under the strip, that's the technique to use. So using two trowels like this, it eliminates a lot of the movements where I would be taking this thinset, putting it in my bucket. If you can use whatever tools to your advantage to minimize your movements, you just become obviously more efficient, but also you save energy, it makes it more enjoyable, and you're overall just refreshed, because this is a hard trade to be in. You know, it's the materials we use are heavy, very detail oriented. You can see we're dealing with 30 seconds of an inch. I mean, precision, and anything you can do to make it more enjoyable, not necessarily easier, but more efficient, it's going to benefit you. But I don't think anybody should ever take on a tiling endeavor without first acknowledging that it's going to be really hard. It's going to be a difficult process, and there's a reason why you got that estimate for a shower for 20 grand, because it's very hard work, it takes a lot of skill, and you just shouldn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm just gonna put tiles up on a wall. If you go into it with the correct mindset, you're better able to prepare yourself for success. You're better able to equip, even mentally, what it's gonna take to do it. You're gonna block off the appropriate time. You're just gonna have a different attitude, different level of expectation. And I like to manage people's expectations when they're doing this stuff. I'd rather kind of under promise and over deliver by telling people this is going to be hard. And then if it goes easier, then they're pleasantly surprised. Where the opposite, if you go in thinking this is going to be something I can bang out in a weekend, the frustration level rises so quickly because you've already set those expectations that you're not going to be able to meet. So that's some of the mental stuff that can really help you. And the less movements you do, the better off you're going to be. So I'm just pushing this guy in. Yeah, and we're already looking pretty good, Lance. That 1/2 inch notch was plenty. And I want to be bottomed out on the bottom. And I'm going to push up. And I don't know, can you tell, Lance, how my level is not perpendicular to, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell, but my level is twisted this way. So I need to get it back perpendicular to the wall. Yeah. So look at that. How's that looking, Lance? How's the bubble?
Looks pretty good.
Yep. Yep.
Looks very good.
So that one was much easier because there's less material. And the same thing on the one that I did yesterday as kind of the training run, because I wanted to do kind of a dry run. So I did that one yesterday. But same thing, the outside one didn't require hardly any thinset, where the inside of the wall was really, the framing was really bad. Yeah, this is a really good technique. Say say you go into a project and the homeowner or whoever, friend, says, hey, I got it ready for tile. You know, I got the wallboard up. You know, can you do tile? And you tell them, yeah, I've done some tile before, or maybe you're a pro and you're like, well, yeah, let's go take a look at your prep work. And you throw a level on there and it's just, you know, the wall's just jacked like that. And you could just be like, oh, yeah, let's straighten these walls out. I don't need to take everything else down. Just render the walls where they're at and you'll be good. So that has gotten us to this point over here. Now that those strips are where I want them, these ones I did yesterday. I used a couple different thinsets. That's kind of what I was trying to refine. I did this one with just some cheap Latacrete LHT thinset, and it was a nightmare. I really struggled with it. I did this one with Art XX5, and it's much easier. So I was thinking, you know, this is the way to go with lightweight thinset. Now that we got that done, basically this is where the step would be, because here, I think if you were to do this in a shower, say you had to do all 3 walls, you'd probably spend a day, you know, doing this, you know, getting the strips up. The next day you would come in after these strips are hard and do the screeding. So, you know, if this was kind of a real life scenario, you know, this is what we did yesterday. Now it's ready for the screeding. I'm going to loosen up the thinset. I don't want the thinset this stiff. So I'm gonna just take a little break, get a drink of water, mix up some thinset that's looser, and I'll show you how we fill in the rest of these walls here. Okay, so I got a thinner batch of thinset. It's not thin though. It's probably how I'd mix it up if I was setting large format tile on a floor or wall. It's just mixed up to a thicker consistency, still non-sag, still wants to hold, but it's not as stiff as what I use to set the strips themselves. So that's ready to go. So now I just need to fill in basically in between the strips. And I'm gonna try using a couple different straight edges, so bear with me. Just take a sponge and wet down the old thinset that's already up there. This will just promote a better bond. I can even clean off my float strips if I want. Anytime you're doing new mortar to old, it's a good idea to just get it wet first. That gives you a better bond between the two surfaces. I kind of like that because that actually cleaned off the strip too. Okay. I switched out my gloves to, these are latex Thickster is the brand glove. I use these when my hands are going to be getting wet. When I was doing the strips, I was using my regular Tile Coach gloves. The benefit of using those Tile Coach gloves is they're breathable. Your hands don't get sweaty. Since I'm going to have to be cleaning, I switched to these. The cons to using this type of glove is your hands can't breathe. The temperature gradient between the cold water that you put your hands in and your warm skin creates condensation on the inside of your glove. People actually think that you're sweating. It's actually condensation building up because your hands can't breathe. But anyways, and I have these cheap like cotton gloves that I put on underneath. That kind of helps a little bit, but you want to take care of your hands. Thinset is very alkaline. It has other chemicals in it. You want to keep it off of your skin. I do have some chemical-induced dermatitis from years and years of not wearing gloves doing tile. So everybody use gloves. I'm going to use the same method with the 2 flat trowels. I want to get my bucket as close to my work area as possible. One thing I probably want to do, I got all these little crumbs down here from cleaning these off. I'm actually going to vacuum these up because I don't want these caught into my thinset as I'm screeding, because it'll get caught in there and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to vacuum that out real quick.
Wow, you could really lay that stuff on there.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh.
Pro Light is good, and you can apply it up to 3/4 inches thick. That's what it's rated for. So I think it's a great option for what we're doing. See, this little move by putting the trowel onto one and then back onto the other, that's a really good thing I'd like you to practice, because that just, it helps get the thinset up. You know, you want to try to avoid it rolling off of the wall, and that just seems to help if you can get it on right there. I'm not sure this is going to be enough thinset. I'm going through it pretty fast. Again, it's better to get more material up on the wall and have to take it off than it is to start screeding and then have to fill in. But you're not going to be perfect. You don't want it too thick, because then you're just taking way too much material off. But it is easier to fill in those low spots before you start screeding. I'm just doing my best to create kind of an even coat here. And I know where my thick spots need to be, and I know where my thin spots need to be, and that's, you need that information as you're putting the material up, because it's just going to speed it up and make it more efficient. So you can see I got low spots. I'll just take this, comb it up. And I'll probably do, you know what I'm going to do here is, it would be smart to use some blue tape and protect the wall so that I don't have to clean the wall after. See, that took me about 15 seconds to do, and if I would have got thinset on that wall, it would have probably taken me 5 minutes of scrubbing to get that stuff off. Yeah, I might be exaggerating a little bit there. Catch me if I'm exaggerating. Your edges, the edges could also be, you know, you could put what we call a stopper stick. You could screw, I mean, this mortar lock ledger is just one example. You could screw something to the wall to kind of define that edge a little bit better. I'm just freehanding it. It probably depends on what tile I'm using. See, I'm already getting thinset, so that's why I'm using rubber gloves. But, you know, if you're doing 12 by 24, you know, that edge doesn't have to be perfect. If you're doing mosaic, it does. So it would depend on what material I was using there. And you kind of have to burn it into the edge a little bit so that it sticks and doesn't roll off when you screed. So I'll probably go up to about here and do my first screed. And see, you don't have to go up every time. You can go side to side. Whatever feels more natural. And the better you can get it on this step, the closer to the finished product that you can get on this step, the better it's going to be. Because it's just going to mean you don't have to go back over it again. Be able to see those low spots and just fill in as you need. Okay, I'm going to start with that. So here's an example of how you keep your mud stirred down. Just want to make sure you get it all off of the sides. And all stirred down to where it should be at the bottom of the bucket. Because if it's stuck to the side, it's going to start drying out unevenly, and it's going to be hard to work with, and it's going to get all over the place. And you can just give it like a little stir to keep it workable. So that kind of swirling motion that I'm doing, that's used a lot. It's really helpful. That helps you pick thinset up. It's hard to describe that motion of getting the thinset out of the bucket, but it's almost like a swirl scoop. A scoop. I mean, that's a great technique just to practice right there. Just stuff like that. You could do that for hours. Probably a good workout too. I mean, look at my forearms. I'm going to start with, let's see which one works better. I'm going to start with my stick. It's probably helpful to get it wet. Just keep it easier to keep clean. This one I've used on projects is like ledger boards to stack tiles on. That's why it has screws in it and thinset. I'm hoping the old thinset on here doesn't catch the new thinset. But when you're screeding back and forth motions, we don't want to just drag straight up the wall. See, we got the side to side motions. And that will help get the thinset off evenly. If I were to pull that straight up, it's going to drag and create voids. So I could either take this thinset, put it right into my low spots like this, or I can put it back in my bucket. I have a feeling I'm going to be low all the way up like that. Let's see how that does. Again, this is just a piece of baseboard and it's working out really well. You want to keep it clean. You don't want the thinset drying on there. Maybe just keep a rag to kind of keep it clean, or your sponge. Yeah, so fill in any low spots and then just continue side to side motion. That we got a couple little low spots, but not bad at all. Low spot there.
You got it pretty good.
Yeah, that came out really nice. Take the extra, put it back into the bucket. And I'll try the aluminum straight edge, see if that does anything different, if that's any better. So yeah, I would say the aluminum does work a little better. I think because it's a sharper edge, it's cutting a little bit better. And one trick, I didn't do it on that pass, but one trick with these edges is it's cleaner to just turn them over, because normally with wall float you want to catch your mud into this part of the L, but turning it over keeps it a little bit cleaner. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So here's an example of why I put my strip on the inside of the curb, because I need to get an edge down in here or else I wouldn't be able to screed this part. So again, this way. Like that. And so yeah, when you do the back side of the edge like that, it's a lot easier just to do that. Much cleaner than getting thinset on the inside of your edge there. So yeah, I would probably say if you can get the aluminum edges, you're gonna have better results. But this doesn't have to be perfect unless it's a mosaic. It's the wall, you know, any of these little ridges don't really matter. We're just filling in the bulk to make this a lot easier when we're installing tile. But I'm really happy with those results. So I'm just gonna continue going up the wall, and then I'll show you how we pull the strips at the end. Okay, so we're getting really close here. You can see that's how much thinset we have left. I always love being close on thinset. I don't know why. It's just one of those, it's almost like a game. I kind of gamify this thing. Like how good am I at mixing up the exact amount of thinset. But when you're short, it really sucks because now I'd have to go back and mix. I don't know. It's so close that I think if I have any left, it's going to be just a smidge. So let me see. Got a few more areas up here. A couple low spots right in here. And then and you might ask, why don't you just, kind of use plops of thinset as you're setting the tile? Well, TCNA requires that we have 95% coverage in wet areas. So in a shower, that means 95%, only 5% can be voids behind the tile, voids in thinset. So that's why it is so important to get these walls rendered so that when you do a consistent notch, like a 1/2 inch notch or a sawtooth trowel, that you're getting a consistent mud bed has 95% coverage under the tile. So that's one of the big hacks we see, is people just putting plops of thinset on the wall, putting the tile on. And you got all those voids in the tile, which not only is that mechanically unsound, a lot of times they'll just pull right off the wall, but it also allows breeding ground for mold and water just to kind of sit back there. So to prevent mold, we want 95% coverage so that there's no spaces behind the tile for that mold to grow. So that is why we're doing this. And again, we are so close. Just gonna scrape every last little bit of this thinset. I think we got it. Lance. I think we got it.
So close.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Smooth it out.
This is what, how many years of experience gets you?
This, so I started doing tile in 1998 and I formed my own company in 2003. So I'm bad at math. I don't know how it is. Close to 30 years though. Getting close, getting up there. Oh yeah, we got enough. So I'll probably just take this thinset and I'm gonna fill in a couple little low spots that I have. Again, a few of these, what we call cat eyes or holidays, you don't need to worry about, because when you notch your thinset for the tile, you're gonna fill that in. But just because I'm kind of OCD, I like things to be as done as I can get them within reason. Okay. So, and if you're at home and you're doing this, get yourself somebody to help. Just do like this. I mean, that makes a big difference. Just having somebody to keep your tools clean, to run and grab you things that you need. And it really does add up. You notice that all these motions that I do really add up. And if you're a professional, again, I think it's part of our duty to give back what was given to us. You know, somebody trained me. I worked for a union tile setter from 1998 to around 2003 before I went on my own. He taught me most of the stuff that I know, at least the general principles and troweling and plumb level. Again, a lot of those techniques are old school, and some of my earliest videos, like second video was a tile floor layout, And I didn't have a laser at the time, so it was done with chalk lines and figuring out 3, 4, 5 triangles using Pythagorean theorem, all those old school techniques, but I learned those from somebody. And so I always, whenever I talk to a tile setter and they're working by themselves, I try to encourage them to not only reduce the wear and tear on their body, but also train the next generation, bring somebody else up. It's a really rewarding part of what we do, to be able to train somebody. My brother-in-law Steve, who worked with me for 15 years, he recently went on his own. He's been in a lot of my videos, but he's been on his own for about 2 years, making a good living for him and his family. He bought his own house. Again, he's got a son who's 2 years old now, and he's got a really good life from the trade that I taught him. And that's really rewarding. So I encourage you, if you're a professional, find somebody who's willing to learn, wants to learn, and train them up. It'll help you out, it'll help grow your business, it'll allow you to do other things with the business. Say, you know, maybe they can get this technique down while you're setting some tile, making some money, and your business just becomes much more productive. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. But if you're a DIYer, yeah, get your wife, your partner, your husband, whoever to help do these little things, and it'll make it easier. So once you've got the main part of your walls screeded, you can do the drag, and I use the drag like this a lot, just to clean up that inside corner. But when you have a lot of mud on there, you gotta give it the side-to-side motion. Sharp corner. And that's about it. You've probably been wondering, do we leave these strips in or do we take them out? The beautiful thing about these flashing strips is that even though this thinset that I used to install them yesterday is cured, the surface is so slick that they'll just pop right off. And you could just leave these in until you're ready to start setting tile, but I'm going to take them out right now just to show you. I'll probably take off this tape too. Let me peel this. I'm going to get this tape off of here. It should just peel in a nice line. Yeah, look at that. That's beautiful. See how much work that saved just by putting that little piece of tape. It took me 15 seconds. This allowed me to do that. Clean my hands again. You'll notice throughout this process I just kept cleaning. If I ever got thinset on my hands or I got it on my tool where I didn't want it, I took the time to clean it. You don't want to keep working with thinset on your handle or on your hands. You just end up keep spreading it everywhere. And I think you could start from either direction, but again, this would probably be easy. Now, see, that just comes right out. Look how easy that comes out. Isn't that beautiful? 30 mil thickness. Again, the thickness of a credit card, or the finished thickness of 2 coats of Hydroban or Red Guard. That's all that is. So you could, you know, I would just fill that in when I'm setting. You know, I don't think you need to like take the time to pre-fill that. I would just, as I'm setting tile, credit card thickness, just comb my notch trowel right over it. This also works really well on backsplashes. Backsplashes, we see this a lot, where you got this really humpy backsplash, dips and bows in the studs, and you just cut these flashing strips, you know, 18 inches or whatever the height of the backsplash, embed them, screed, you know, flash the thinset right off. When you're doing a backsplash, you could probably actually use speed set so that you could do it, fill in the spots, and then get on and set it the same day. Shower, again, because we're doing bigger walls, this would probably be at least a day's process if you had 3 walls. Again, a lot of times when you're working, you know, maybe of course we did this wall and it's perfectly flat and plumb. You know, maybe only one wall has to be done. Maybe only 2 walls has to be done. It's all going to be dependent on what you show up and see. Anyways, I think using speed set on splashes would be good, but for our application, we just use Pro Light. But yeah, I almost don't even need any force. I mean, that's just comes right off. So 30 mils credit card thickness, that's all you got. So over here, I don't know if these have firmed up quite enough. I think they do. Actually, these have firmed up. See, I can't put my finger. Because I mix the thin set so quick and they have so much air to them, these strips have actually, you know, this thin set is firm enough where I could probably do the screeding on it. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe if I would have done this, jumped on another wall and put the strips up, or went and had lunch or something, I think you could come by and do it the same day. But you want to see, you know, give it some pressure. If you're in doubt, just wait until the next day. But that's basically how it's done. And again, very simple, effective way to get a wall flat and ready for tile. If you've ever tried to set tile on a wall that is not flat and plumb, it's a nightmare. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to level tiles with thin set as you go, unless you're dot setting, which again is a no-no. Don't dot set. That's not cool. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. Again, these strips will be available. I'll put a link so you can purchase them. They're very inexpensive flashing strips. You can also use them as template material. I'll make a video showing how I use them to like template a shower floor when you're doing mosaics. Very handy to do that. But I'm really glad you were here. Glad you stayed to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. I love you. I love being your tile coach. We'll see you on the next video.